So, who's the better player? Drew Pearson or Otis Taylor? Let's break it down. There was a lot of angry Cowboys in 2020 whenever Pearson didn't get into the Hall of Fame again. Even Stephen A. Smith called it an egregious snub, and he's one of the biggest Cowboy haters of them all. There's probably a good reason for it, though. He was one of the top 3 receivers of his decade. He helped his team win a Super Bowl. They called him Mr. Clutch. And he was better than other notable receivers of the decade, including Lynn Swann, who he outgained by over 2,000 yards. Good news for him is he will be inducted in 2022 after getting the nod last year. But if you think the Dallas fans were upset in 2020, how do you think that the Otis Taylor camp's feeling now that he's in his 42nd year of being snubbed by the Hall of Fame? Taylor was considered the most dangerous receiver of his era, coming in 1965 and immediately making an impact on the run-heavy Chiefs. In just his second year in Kansas City, Taylor led the league at a whopping 22.4 yards per reception and had 1,297 receiving yards for the season as well, leading with the longest touchdown run of 89 yards on that season. He was a first-team All-Pro selection that year. Former Kansas City Star columnist and now Sports Illustrated writer Joe Posnanski said Otis Taylor's better than Charlie Joyner, Chris Carter, Tim Brown, and Andre Reed, all of them Hall of Famers. That argument hadn't swayed voters as of yet, but the fact that Pearson is getting in this summer may be good as far as Otis Taylor is concerned. Because the truth is that age-old theory that his numbers just don't stack up to the rest of the players in the Hall of Fame is starting to go by the wayside the more that you see guys like Pearson getting in. As you can see here, Pearson does have more receptions than Taylor over his career at 489 to Otis's 410, and he outgained him in receiving yards at 7,822 to Otis's 7,306. But where Taylor's ahead is in yards per reception at 17.8 and touchdowns at 60 to Pearson's 48. And this is despite playing in 26 less games overall in his career than Pearson did. And you can figure that he would probably have made up that 516-yard difference in receiving yards for their career if he had just played in one more season. And with every player like Pearson or his former teammate Bob Hayes that gets in with these razor-thin advantages over him, and even being behind him in some areas, it looks even better for Taylor to finally get his Hall call this year as well. Again, 516 yards is a no-brainer difference between the two of them, and he had more touchdowns than Pearson in his career as well. There's not a whole lot of people that'll tell you that Pearson was a better receiver than Otis Taylor was, and at the very least, Taylor was his equal. They both went to 3 Pro Bowls, and Pearson did have the edge in All-Pro selections for the first team, but never had over 1,100 yards, while Otis had 1,297 one year and also had 1,110 in 1971 when he also led the league in yards per game at 79.3. That was the season that he was named United Press International's most valuable player, and he's the only wide receiver in history to have ever gotten that award. He was second in Associated Press MVP voting the same season, and there's only one other player that's ever done that. One Jerry Rice in 1987 when he was second to John Elway in MVP voting. Say whatever you will, but anytime you're in a conversation with Jerry Rice, it's a great conversation to be in. Both players won Super Bowls with their teams, with Otis Taylor having 6 receptions for 81 yards and a 46-yard touchdown in Super Bowl IV to seal the deal against Minnesota. Pearson also won a Super Bowl as a member of the Cowboys team in 1978 that beat the Denver Broncos 27-10. However, he only had 1 reception in the game for 13 yards. At the end of the day, you're not going to call Pearson a non-Hall of Famer just because you may think that Otis Taylor was a better player. I tend to think that's the case. What I will say is the differences between the two of them, statistically speaking anyway, are so marginal that there's no way that you can justify putting one of them in and leaving the other one out anymore. With Otis only being behind 516 yards for his career and being ahead in touchdowns, not to mention the fact that he played in a slightly different era than Pearson did, where they threw the ball even less, that tells you that this is not a statistical difference that you can really justify keeping him out for anymore. Otis Taylor belongs in the Hall of Fame, and it's way past due time to put him in there.